Chapter 2. Black Shadows. Ares' ship circled the academy looking like some sort of greenhouse. The trees inside it occupied most of its hull except for the large obsidian plate that stood out inside it. It was used as the floor of the president's office in the daytime, and on the floor below it, the obsidian rock also doubled as a ceiling for Ares' house below. Her house was surrounded by a pond and trees. Inside, she took off her uniform, revealing her nighttime negligee, and sat on her sofa. She brought up a terminal screen and, with a pen held behind her ears, she began reading a report that her secretary had submitted to her. Mikami came in with a pot of tea and a tray of cups and cleared her throat. She called Ares' name, but Ares was concentrating so hard that she didn't acknowledge her. Mikami decided not to break her concentration and instead poured a glass for her and left it on the table. She notified Ares of its presence. Ares acknowledged her. When she was done reading, she picked up the tea and sipped it. What were you reading? It was a report on the 38 illegal entrances into the academy since Sena had arrived. That meant that they had detected at least 38 criminals illegally sneaking into the Galaxy Academy. Sena's talent for drawing in criminals is tremendous, Mikami said, but she said it in a way to imply something. Is there something you know that I should be worried about? I haven't confirmed it yet, but Mikami hesitantly said. Ares, who was in a relaxed posture, got nervous. When Mikami reported information Ares didn't already know, it was highly likely that it was information that was quite important. There is a possibility that AA33485 is one of those intruders, said Mikami. Ares was stunned. She looked both afraid and angry. It was an alphanumeric pattern that Ares had memorized and would never forget. She couldn't believe it. Mikami's intel came from the Koremitsu's intelligence network, which was comparable to Sito's. Minami owned it, though not Mikami. Who knew how much time had passed since he had shared this with Mikami? AA33485. Widow might be lurking in the academy. Ares asked as she clenched her fist tight and bit into it. She bit so hard she bled. Mikami confirmed her suspicions. Does Sito know about the situation? She does, and she told me that you would be more than capable of dealing with the situation. All the actions of the woman called Widow were terrible and gruesome. She had changed her name, face shape, and sometimes even her body. One after another, she had stolen the appearances of those who had encountered her, then their lives, and then their wealth. She was like a living pathogen, and she had taken the life of Ares' father. Minami asked if Ares was okay, and she told her she was just remembering the good old days. On Irai, Widow had caused a mass suicide event that started a rebellion. When Ares' father went to stop the rebellion, the entire colony disappeared. Irai as a nation was pretty much wiped out after that. Her aunt, Kira Magma, helped Ares get through that hard time. She wasn't sure what she would have done without her. She wanted to know what happened to those people in the colony. She wondered if Widow had hidden them somewhere. But for now, those were questions she would have to solve in the future. Ares decided to make the best choice for Irai. Widow, she had changed the destiny of an entire country by annihilating it, and no one in the galaxy knew how. She was one of the few women in the galaxy whose name stood on the same pantheon as Sito and Washu. Ares tried to calm herself. She internally reprimanded herself for letting her emotions get away from her. She was not the woman she used to be, the one who could barely even protect her daughter. She was an academic mastermind of the highest order, and she was the great philosopher Airi Masaki. She reaffirmed her stance on the issue and decided to confront her. But she still couldn't help but shudder when she thought of Widow. Well then, where should I start? She said, trying to encourage herself into action. She had assembled a program to predict Widow's behavior, using what little information of her previous criminal history she could find. She had tried applying it to the database of the information department of the Academy many times, but she was never granted permission to do so. The Academy had many things going on in it that many people would like to know for less than noble purposes, so they had an information department that helped gather intel on it to keep this from happening. Airi realized, though, that it wouldn't matter because a woman like Widow would notice a large-scale investigation. Airi also realized Mikami had just been standing there looking at her thinking, and she realized that if Mikami reported this to Sito, then the plan for investigating Widow had already been decided without her. Airi asked Mikami what her and Sito's plan was. In instances where Eri and her subordinates couldn't go in somewhere to investigate, it would have been necessary to use either Sido or Mikami's subordinates to gain access to an area. Mikami told Eri that she couldn't lend her subordinates to help without the rest of her family noticing. Only Sido could lend her staff if they wanted to keep this investigation a secret. The predecessor to the Galaxy Academy was Jurai's Royal Academy, and as such the influence they had in the GP was great, even though they were now an independent organization. Sido will be sending 4 people to help with the investigation, Mikami told Eri. One of Sido's subordinates, Kanemitsu, had an entire armada behind him, the 7th Defense Fleet, so even if it was only 4 people, the scale of the investigation was larger than the number let on. Mikami told her that the sword had been sent this time. Kanemitsu was the sword, Minaho was her shield, but in this case, it meant her offensive team. Have you already identified the target then? No, they haven't. Then why have they been dispatched? To guard Sena. Mikami quickly replied. If the swords failed, the best they could do was to send in their intel department and try to drive Widow out of the academy. Back at Sena's dorm, after dinner specifically, Kenneth set up the living room to act as a sort of holodeck that transmitted both Sena to a setting and the setting to Sena. They got Sena to answer the questions of the fan club members who called yesterday. It seemed that this was the thing that his roommate promised that got them to stop bugging him the other day. The set of the broadcast was said to be a replica of a really long-lived program that had been around for about 10,000 years. The hostess of the show explained that the software being used was made by the tenants. David Doma of the Ryoko fan club asked him if Sena was acquainted with Alan. It seemed Alan had started a cult using the picture of Ryoko and had been exploiting people for money, and he had developed a religion-like cult around it. David asked him about the random jump incident. Then the Kuriko fan club representative Elroy Egasu was introduced to ask him questions, but the power went out before he could answer. It seemed like they caused a blackout. Kenneth and Rajo went outside to get it fixed. In the dark, a monitor appeared in front of Sena. Eri called Sena's name, but Sena quickly turned away from the monitor. That's kind of rude. Why aren't you looking at me when I talk to you? Eri, where are you calling me from? The bath. Eri was naked in a bath brushing her hair. Please put something on. Oh, Sena, who dresses up for a bath? He failed to convince her. He had no choice but to just try to look away from the screen. Eri asked if he was okay or needed anything. Well, actually, Eri's monitor chased after him the entire time he tried to tell her. Elroy the fanboy was getting bombarded with complaints. He told everyone that he didn't know why they stopped broadcasting and they should ask Kenneth. He was told that their room's lights were out by the main fanboy. They figured it was electrical trouble. David, his other roommate, was lying on a futon when he got a call from Alan's secretary, who he was acquainted with. The monitor was bouncing around Sena's head as he ran away from it. Are you even listening to me? Well, fine then, if you're going to ignore me. The monitor disappeared. But then her image completely covered his vision. He rubbed his eyes and repeatedly blinked. It didn't go away. She was broadcasting directly to his visual cortex. Hey Sena, you jerk, when you're talking with someone, look them in the eyes, then look at their body. Then, the image slowly panned down as Eri bathed herself. Wow, idea. Stop it. Eri, stop it, I can see it. That's because I'm polishing it to make it beautiful. Please stop it. How about if I do it some more? Suddenly Minami got in front of her and she scolded her for what she was doing. The broadcast in his eyes ended, only a monitor was left in front of him. He thanked Mikami. She asked Sena if he had been told not to talk about the Masaki family living on Earth yet. No. Yosho, Aika, Sasami, Ryoko, and Washa should all not be talked about, as well as Tenchi. They are officially treated as missing, and Ryoko and Washu's survival is only known by Jurai's royalty. Eri interrupted her. Sorry, it was my fault. I forgot to tell him. She was wrapped in a towel, but it started falling off. Sena looked away. Mikami noticed why Sena was turning red and looking away. Remember Sena, officially Kuriko is from the Masaki house, from the branch that is supposedly descended from the youngest sister of the first emperor of Jurai. The first princess? Earthlings who went up into space for the first time. Oh, is that why Sita said that there's a precedent? Yes. So be careful when they interview you about Kariko and Amain. Please do not talk about Tenchi. Understood. Also, about my question. The screen turned black for a second, and when it came back on, Mikami was gone, but Eri was still there now, topless. He told her no, he was plenty happy as is. Eri was disappointed by this. Sana wondered about her. She was married, and when she talked about her husband, and when her daughter Minaho talked about it, it didn't seem like she was unhappy with her marriage or her family. Eri informed him that she also had some news for him about the Ryoko fan club. It seemed there had been a coup by the members of the cult, and they overthrew and exiled Alan, Barry, and Cohen. That was quick. The lights turned back on and Eri's broadcast cut out. Elroy asked Sana about how he knew Kariko. Sana remembered not to say anything about Tenchi. Kariko is a friend's older sister that I have known since kindergarten, and I am indebted to her. Huh. So, childhood friend, is it? Yes. How long have you been taking baths with her? Since I was 7 years old. Did you ever share a bed with her? Yes, usually with Kai, her brother. As the interview went on, Elroy began to cry at the kindness of Kariko. By the way, what do you think of her? Sana blushed and hesitated. What I think about Kariko. What do you think about Miss Kariko? Sana realized he couldn't answer truthfully without causing problems. He said he had no feelings for her, like that he only thought of her as a big sister. They asked how he met Amain. He told them he met her at Kariko's house and she gave him a brochure. Kenneth ended the interview and told them anything more would be an invasion of privacy. Afterwards, Kenneth was working on setting up Sana's NB. He heard a notification sound. It was time for roll call in the dorm, so they stood in the center of the room and motioned for Sana to do the same. 2 GP instructors appeared in front of them as holograms. Kenneth Baru. Rajo Giawara. Kenneth and Rajo slowly saluted. And Yamada Sana. A ring of light came up around their feet and scanned them for ID verification purposes. One of the instructors frowned because there was a distortion in Sana's data. They were advised this might happen. His data was making the system generate errors. Did you want to rescan me? No. The errors are proof enough for us. The entrance ceremony is tomorrow. We suggest you get some rest. They saluted and the instructors disappeared. His roommate sighed. This whole thing made them nervous every day, no matter how many times they did it. They had to do it till they graduated. Even after graduation, it seems that there are a lot of people who can't escape the habit of standing upright at this time. Sana began to head to bed, but his roommates stopped him. They wanted to sneak out. Back at Fingu's, the Amain fan's place, Fingu and Elroy decided to go surprise interview Sana at his dorm room. They were locked in though. It was 9 p.m. Even grade school students were still up, but the dorm was locked down for the night. Rajo asked Sana to follow a set of instructions in order to unlock their door. He plugged in his ID and entered his serial number and his voice print, and an error sounded. He repeated it and it beeped again. He tried again. Error. He asked Rajo why it wasn't working. Try doing it again, saying the numbers out loud. He tried again. Same error. He was saying weird numbers according to them. Read the numbers out loud again. He did. What he said was wrong again and they laughed. Sana, you came from an early stage planet, right? Yeah. Don't they use the galactic official language on Earth? Ananan said that they installed nanomachines. They figured it must have been a mistake in the nanomachines, but they had never heard of such a thing. They blamed it on his probability bias. Oh, I see. Rajo, what should I do? We can't do anything at our level. Let's consult a professional to install a fix to the program tomorrow. It shouldn't be a problem in everyday life because it hasn't been a problem till now, but please be careful with numbers. They suspected that the previous ordeal with the many trays of food may have been a mistake in that program. But Sana wondered why he was able to dial numbers on the phone, and how did he read the room number? They looked up a phone on their screen and showed him it. It was a picture of the phone he used. Oh, this is an antique phone design that is popular recently. I heard that I was excavated from some ruins. Recently, it's become trendy to have a phone like this and use these numeric characters for telephone communication. Well, that's the Earth's numbers. So that's why he could use them. He asked them to rewrite the number into Earth numbers. They hesitated to give it to him because he had missed the window of time to install the initial software onto NB. They were afraid if they tried again there might be an installation error caused by Seina's luck, and they didn't know what would happen, so they thought it would be a good idea to have a professional take care of it. Since this machine is a prototype, if you limit the function, you will be managed by the test startup function, and the processing speed will be reversed faster. This put Seina in a sad mood. He felt the burden of his bad luck again.